James awoke at around 7 p.m., feeling invigorated. Uncertain whether his euphoria was due to the previous night's passionate encounter or the valuable object now in his possession, he contemplated his past involvement in the gold trade. Although he'd dabbled in it before, he had never fully committed, because pure gold was rare and its profits unpredictable, unlike the drug business. Yet, he recognized that a single successful gold deal could rival the earnings from 5 drug transactions, and it came with fewer risks. With the pure gold in his hands, he knew he could dominate the market and attract eager dealers. The potential wealth was tantalizing, and James believed he could buy anything he desired. Despite the allure of wealth, James had a secure hideout and wasn't afraid of the police. He had faced legal troubles before and understood how those in power could be persuaded to drop charges against him. For now, his immediate concerns didn't trouble him. He glanced at the beautiful woman sleeping beside him, deciding to let her rest while he tended to unfinished business. As he dressed, his gaze lingered on her naked form, promising himself more intimate moments upon his return. She remained asleep as he unlocked a concealed safe behind a painting featuring a nude Chinese woman, an image he found appealing. He examined the object inside before activating a hidden camera and exiting the room. Aware that people often yielded to temptation when left alone, especially women, he had used this vulnerability in the past to exert control. If provoked, he didn't hesitate to resort to violence. Summoning his associates, James headed to the BQ, where Bruno, Jackson, and Ibro were already waiting. James directed his attention to Ekane and the women, seeking answers about the gold and the police's interest in the girl at the hospital. Sandra explained that the girl's father had brought the gold home, resulting in her mother's murder. She had taken the gold and confided in Sandra, who ran an NGO for abused children and women. The police had been watching over her, expecting to apprehend her father if he tried to come for her or the medallion. Sandra lied that there were more precious objects at Angela's home and offered to lead them to the remaining gold at Angela's family home in Lugba. James inquired further, asking about the quantity of gold and the location of her family's house. Sandra assured him there was more gold hidden there, but nobody else was aware of it. She pleaded for their freedom in exchange for the gold's location. James, however, reminded her of his grudge against her boyfriend and his authority in this situation. He decided to accompany Jackson to Lugba while instructing Bruno and Ibro to guard the house. He cautioned them to be ready to use force if necessary, and ordered that his guest from Uyo in his room remain inside until his return. Bruno and Ibro escorted Akane and Angela back to the building, leaving Sandra worried about the unintended consequences of her lies. She hadn't anticipated the change of plans, and watched with concern as Akane and the girl she had grown fond of were taken inside. Suddenly, to everyone's amazement, Angela's anguished plea filled the air, her words carrying a desperate longing to accompany Sandra on wherever she was going. Linda awoke long before James departed from the room. She had observed him tinker with something concealed behind a painting in the exquisitely furnished room, and it stirred a desire in her to stay in James's house indefinitely. Her affection for James had already taken root. He possessed charm, affluence, and a caring disposition, qualities that any woman would cherish. Just yesterday, he had promptly whisked her away from the airport, explaining that he was fatigued and needed rest, with the promise of taking her on a tour of the town and shopping the following day. Then, he had introduced her to his splendid abode, a 5-bedroom bungalow, complete with a swimming pool and a guest quarters. As she gazed upon this luxurious residence, she couldn't help but envision herself as the future Mrs. James. And so, she had willingly given him the most passionate moments he could desire. This morning, she had deliberately unveiled herself before he rose from bed, desiring to grant him a captivating view of her exceptionally beautiful physique, fueling his desire for her and leaving him with thoughts of her long after his departure. After James left the room, Linda lingered in bed for approximately 15 minutes before finally getting up and making her way to the bathroom. However, while in the bathroom, she became aware of the ominous sounds of men engaged in a heated discussion outside the building on the lower floor, just beyond her view from the bathroom window. Although the words exchanged were unclear, she could discern the frosty atmosphere and tension in the air. Her curiosity piqued. Linda strained her ears to catch any comprehensible snippets of conversation. Then, amidst the tumult, the cry of a little girl pierced the air. Bewildered and concerned, she couldn't help but wonder, what on earth is happening here? Her thoughts swirled with uncertainty as she contemplated the unsettling situation. Inspector Lucky and Rotimi entered Chief Uzor's well-appointed sitting room, finding seats as they waited for him. The morning felt peculiar, filled with uncertainty, particularly regarding Odeon and Gaul's expectations. Lucky couldn't help but wonder why Odeon was still deep in thought. Hadn't the entire night been sufficient for reflection? He hoped the monk would come up with something tangible. Anxiety permeated the room, evident in Rotimi's tired expression. Both of them had likely spent a sleepless night due to this perplexing case. This investigation marks their first collaboration instead of their usual phone discussions. The police officer appreciated having Rotimi as his partner in this endeavor. They had barely sipped their coffee when Chief Uzor made his entrance. The expression on his face made it clear that he appreciated their presence. Chief Uzor knew they were still waiting for Odeon's plan to assist Saint in overcoming his writer's block. Both the police officer and the journalist greeted him as he entered the room. He expressed gratitude, acknowledging that none of them had enjoyed a peaceful night. He spoke of his restless night, particularly the conversation with his daughter about the possibility of her having a brother. He admitted that he couldn't conceal his anxiety any longer and had to be cautious in not alarming her with the idea of a poltergeist among them. Understanding his concern, the journalist stressed the importance of urgently locating the 3 individuals who had been kidnapped, fearing the loss of the medallion and potential harm to the captives. Chief Uzor considered their concerns before indicating that he might have information regarding the whereabouts of a couple of James's properties. Inspector Lucky inquired about Chief Uzor's connection to James, and the chief explained that while they weren't close friends, he knew people who had associations with him. He expressed his wariness of James, whom he considered dangerous, and reflected on how criminals openly operated in Abuja. As Chief Uzor mentioned a property transaction in Utako involving James, Inspector Lucky became attentive. He asked if there was an address for this private residence, but Chief Uzor didn't have it yet and intended to contact his friend to obtain it. Lucky couldn't help but wonder about Chief Uzor's true motivations. Was he involved because he genuinely wanted to find his son? Or was it fear of being affected by the demon's activities that drove him? During their conversation, Inspector Lucky received a call from Officer Audu. He listened intently, then stood up abruptly, causing concern among those in the room. After ending the call, he broke the troubling news to them. "The writer has been kidnapped by Clifford," Lucky announced, his expression filled with helplessness. The day had begun on a somber note, and they could only wonder how it would end. Chief Uzor exclaimed, "Oh my God!" Rotimi immediately inquired about Odeon and Janet. "Clifford entered the guest house and abducted the boy. I don't have all the details, but Odeon is still meditating, Janet is unconscious, and an officer was killed by the black smoke. I need to go there immediately," Lucky explained. Rotimi stood up, offering his support, and Lucky accepted. As they prepared to leave, Lucky requested that Chief Uzor provide them with the address as soon as possible. The weight of the case was taking its toll on him, and the progress he had hoped for seemed elusive.